Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to join you again for another Coffee with Carriers. This is Jack Lyons, Director of Sales with LISI, and I'm really excited today to be joined by one of our best partners and also a very distinguished guest in Dr. Paul Bernstein. Dr. Paul Bernstein, would you mind giving us a little bit of a background and information on yourself and the role that you play with Kaiser Permanente?
Sure, Jack. Great to be here today. Thanks for having us. I'm a head and neck surgeon. I've been with Kaiser Permanente for decades. I don't want to say how long, but a lot of decades. And I was the past medical director of Kaiser Permanente in San Diego for about a decade. During my time as medical director, we grew into the largest area in the nation in terms of when you look at membership. We had 1,200 doctors, 8,000 employees and nurses, and built our first hospital at San Diego in the last 40 years. So we built $1 billion state-of-the-art hospital. It was really exciting to be part of that process, and it's now open and treating patients. Luckily open, especially with COVID, and treating patients throughout San Diego County. We've also focused on quality. We went for what's called the Baldrige Award, which is the National Quality Award, and won a special leadership award for Baldrige because we really feel quality is our North Star and something that we really focus on over the years. And so I've also been the regional telehealth coordinator in the past for Kaiser Permanente. So I've had about 4 years of helping to coordinate a lot of our telehealth efforts and help to consult with our innovation group. And that's what we'll be talking about today, is really focusing not only on where Kaiser Permanente has come from, but actually where we're going to be going in the future. And I think it'll be really fun, talking with you and everyone listening today, Jack. So thanks again for having us.
No, it's our distinguished pleasure to have you. And so many times when we hold Coffee with Carrier, our participating guest is someone from a sales background. So I'm really, really excited to have you, Dr. Bernstein, and to really look at, Kaiser and its role in California and our local communities in a unique and different way. And so with that being said, Kaiser has a long, distinguished history in California. How would you describe how Kaiser has changed and evolved over the years?
Yeah, great question. So you can see behind me, you can see the screensaver here at Zoom. We're looking at our 1933 hospital. So Kaiser Permanente really started, over 75 years ago. And we started in the Mojave Desert in the middle of nowhere with one doctor, Dr. Sidney Garfield, that took care of 3,000 aqueduct workers that were building the longest aqueduct in the world at the time, really connecting the Colorado River to thirsty Los Angeles at the time. So where does Kaiser Permanente come from? We've come from this history, out of the desert. It's almost biblical when you think about it. And we've come with this history about focusing on our patients. We've come with a history of prepayment. And so that was the initial innovation that distinguished us from our competitors at the time, was one, prepayment, which changed the paradigm of healthcare from what we call healthcare from sick care. So prior to that, fee for service, we felt, doctors were paid for patients being sick, basically. When you change the way we're paid in terms of prepayment, then it's really one of health and wellness and trying to keep people healthy. So I'm going to share my screen now, if okay with all of you. And let me show you some examples. When you talk about Kaiser Permanente's history, you think about the yes, we can attitude. And that really started back in the shipyards of Henry Kaiser, Richmond, and up and down the west coast of the United States, all the way up to Vancouver. And it was really this attitude that helped to change America. So if you think of America after the war, Henry Kaiser was really a driving force to create the middle class. And I'm going to show a quick video that I think is really cool that shows that during the height of Kaiser Industries, they really controlled a lot of the building that was occurring in the post-World War II boom. Let's go ahead and watch that.
To you by the Kaiser Industry. Kaiser Aluminum and Chemicals, producing for industry and for your home. Fabulous Motors, manufacturers of Jeep four-wheel drive vehicles. Kaiser Steel, #1 in the West. Permanente Cement and Kaiser Gypsum, leaders in the building industry. Fabulous Hawaii Kai, a new community in paradise. And the world-famous Kaiser Engineers.
So Jack, you asked how far, we've come and where we're going. So we actually have come, when you look at Rosie here, so this is one of the original Rosies, Rosie the River, that we saw, initially in that poster. She's 94 now, a happy Kaiser Permanente member, and she's using her bandana material now that she used to wear on her head to make masks. So I think that's relevant to the world that we live in today.
Well, it's just exciting to see, Dr. Bernstein, that even though your history is deep, I didn't realize how varied the Kaiser brand and interaction in the California landscape was. I will share with you, I'm a transplant from the Midwest, and my first experience, with Kaiser was when I moved here in the early 90s. And I guess when I think of Kaiser, I kind of always just think of Kaiser from the medical perspective, as well as, physicians. But it's interesting to see that the Kaiser impact on California is much more broad than that.
Right, and that's, it's been basically part of the culture of California, and that's why our membership in California is so large, close to 9 million members. It's really part of the fabric, of what Henry Kaiser and Sidney Garfield, our original physician, developed. And the interesting thing is, a lot of people don't know, but our history is really like a Hollywood movie, even to the point that Henry Kaiser was asked by Franklin Delano Roosevelt to be his vice presidential running mate for his 4th term. So many people don't know that, but we would have had Henry Kaiser as president of the United States if he had accepted. He turned him down, and instead, speaking of the Midwest, Jack, he took Harry Truman, instead. And that's, one of those episodes in history that really could have changed America. And for that, I wrote a book, and I'll give a little plug for my book. All the money from the book, by the way, goes to charity. But it is an interesting novel, and it's a novel about the amazing history of Kaiser Permanente, starting in the desert with that ruggedly handsome Dr. Garfield and his first nurse, and how they basically established a new way of practice. So it's kind of a fun read.
Well, like I said, it's not often that we get a physician to join us and then also an author. So I encourage everyone to take a look at that, and I'll do the same as well to understand a little bit more deeply the Kaiser experience and roots in California. One of the things that we wanted to talk about a little bit is how Kaiser has used technology to evolve over the year. It really has changed the way that care is delivered, and also the way Californians expect to have their care received and the interaction with their physicians. Would you mind commenting on that a little bit, Dr. Bernstein?
Great question. And we're going to be talking a lot about innovation, together today. And we really, when we talk about the future, it's not only about how we've innovated in the past, it's about how are we going to innovate in the future. And that's really, the direction of what we'll be discussing today. And when you look at the industry imperatives, you're talking about, it's not just Kaiser Permanente against United or Aetna or Anthem. It's not the usual players anymore. Now we're talking about the tech giants. And so we're talking about everybody is getting a healthcare. You've all seen it. We have everything from Amazon PillPack to everything that Apple's doing in terms of a medical record system, to their new Series 6, iWatch, and Amazon, looking at how they can really change the way that we're practicing medicine. There's a lot of new startups that we're competing with, from Teladoc to American Well, that have just taken off during the COVID pandemic. And it's really an industry imperative now that we all innovate. So not just Kaiser Permanente, but everyone really needs to innovate. And so Dr. Garfield, who we saw, right here behind me, if you can still see me, in the desert, really came up with the quote that we need to look to the stars for innovation and change for the future. And that's someone that really looked forward. He was the first physician that came up with the idea of the electronic medical record. He published it in the 1970 issue of Scientific American, had Sidney Garfield's logic about what an electronic medical record system would have. And he was one of the first to really note that computers were key to really taking care of populations of patients so that we could follow their health and make sure that all the appropriate preventive tests and all the appropriate labs and things were followed closely. And so the first IBM punch cards to be used in medicine were Dr. Garfield. And that was an innovative step forward to really change the way and create what we're all doing now. And that's everyone obviously has an electronic medical record, but he was a trailblazer to really do that at the time. And so I thought I'd show this really cute cartoon about the Jetsons. So if any of you remember the Jetsons, it was back in 1962, before most of you were born, but you might have watched some reruns. But let's watch quickly how the Jetsons predicted exactly what we'd be doing during COVID in terms of telehealth.
Elroy, why aren't you ready for school?
I don't feel good, Mom. I think I'm coming down with Venus virus.
Venus virus, eh?
Oh.
All right, hold on. Just hold on. I'll call the doctor. Calling Dr. Racy. Dr. Ken Racy.
Yes, Mrs. Jetson, somebody got a pain in the tummy tum-tum?
It's Elroy, Doctor. I think it's the Venus virus this time.
Venus virus? Oh, that can be catching. All righty, Elroy. This is your dedicated physician speaking. Stick out your tongue. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Oh, my.
Well, what do you see, Doctor?
But you can see how, they took telehealth to the next level. It was cute, but at the same time, they were bringing the doctor into your living room. We'll talk about that now, in terms of how we're using what the Jetsons did in 1962. It's taken us about, 50 years or so to catch up, but we're able to really do more and more, bringing the physician into the convenience of a patient's living room. Let's talk about care at home. And Jack, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt.
Well, no, I thought it was kind of interesting just to reflect on the cartoon for a moment. The doctor was wearing a mask, so that also kind of ties in a little bit to the experience that we're going through. And I think you were kind of moving in the direction in your comments where my mind was, is that when I look at telemedicine, obviously Kaiser has been a leader and an innovator in this area. But I think, you've also established a platform and the ability to even go beyond just the basic office visit type interaction. So I'd love to kind of hear about, what you're doing in that area and where you kind of see the evolution of this technology leading us into the future.
Yeah, great. So we're going to be talking a lot about that. Everything from, using your iPad, as we're looking at here, to do what's called an online visit. So we have what we call e-visits that our physicians, have developed together. And these are simple questionnaires that ask you about your symptoms, but they use a intelligent logic. So it's almost like AI. They use logic to route you to different outcomes. And then the great thing about what we've done is we've incorporated your medical record into it. So we know, your age, sex, if you're pregnant, et cetera. So when you do this, there's some intelligence behind it. And this is a 7-day-a-week offering for our patients. And you can get an answer within 2 hours. A lot of times if indicated for like a urinary infection, you'll get an antibiotic. And there's other things such as if you have a COVID, if you're worried about COVID, you can automatically order a COVID test on you. There's a lot of different things that we've incorporated into e-visits to really make convenience, number one. At the same time, we carefully monitor the quality outcomes of all these to make sure people are getting the right treatment. And we've taken this to the next level, thanks to COVID-19. We're going to have over 1 million e-visits in Southern California alone for our patients. And this is really something, when you think about it, especially when people don't want to drive in, this is a very convenient way of getting, health from your living room. We'll talk more about other ways of doing that, in a second.
Yeah, and I think that's, COVID in a lot of ways is as difficult as it's been on everyone in many different ways in our lives. One of the things I think it's done is kind of accelerated those that may have been a little resistant to interacting with their physician, through technology. So beyond kind of the office visit experience where, you wake up, you have a fever, you have a cold, you have a rash, those type of things, where do you see this technology evolving over time, Dr. Bernstein?
So great question. We're going to go into that as far as this whole transformation of care. So to answer your question briefly, care is going to be transformed. It's going to be transformed from the office building to the doctor's office to the patient's home. And I think that's the direction we're going. And this question here that we can see on the screen, as far as, is it just primary care anymore? The answer is no. I mean, there's a lot of specialty care that we can do virtually. And when you look at our list of different e-visits that we're offering and will offer in the next few months, we're doing everything, from primary care symptoms to specialty care symptoms that go all the way to urology, OBGYN, behavioral health, a lot of dermatology. So the beauty about visits is that a patient can take a picture of a skin lesion. So let's say you're home, you're worried about a growth. You can take a picture, you can send it in, and within a day, a dermatologist will look at it and get back to you about whether you need to come in for a biopsy, whether you need a treatment. So that's a new level of convenience. And when you think about a specialty that really lends itself, to telemedicine, teledermatology that we call it, really is a great example of how we can take care to the next level of convenience, at the same time, improve overall care. Because a lot of people, see this roadblock to care where, it's hard to take off work. They're afraid to drive in now to see somebody in person because of being exposed to things. So imagine you can do this easily from your home so that you're taking pictures of growths and new lesions before they've really gotten bigger. You haven't waited. And I think taking away, that impediment to care by increasing the convenience to care, really can do a lot, to improve the overall health of our patients. So these are just examples of the different, ones that we can do. And so you asked it a second ago, so what does the future, look like, other than, just what we saw with the Jetsons? Chat, is a big one. So we've already done multiple chat pilots, meaning that the patient started with an e-visit, or the patient can call our virtual medical center or call center and be offered the ability to chat with a physician. And so that's something that, we've done and we're learning from, and we're developing e-visits as basically chatbots to allow us to streamline the experience with a patient and to get most of your questions answered up front, so that when you're actually chatting with the physician or clinician, you're getting, more relevant answers and not having to go through the whole story again. And so chat is a big one that we're going to be looking at. So everybody's got their Alexa. I hope my Alexa doesn't start talking to me here. But, and you're thinking about, voice recognition, and that's definitely on the roadmap to do things like this.
From Kaiser Permanente that your next follow-up video visit is scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m.
And so obviously the first thing everyone thinks about is, security. And so that this will have to be, password enabled, et cetera, to make sure you're talking to the right person at home. And this is something that obviously patients would have to opt into if they were interested. Now, this is something that the Jetsons didn't have, but the doc kind of implied, and that was the ability to look into, the throat and examine the patient. So we can actually do that now. So one of the, the hangups about getting a video visit at home is you're seeing the doctor, but the doctor's not examining you. And so you feel, a lot of patients feel, well, he didn't look in my ear, he or she didn't look in my throat. they weren't able to listen to my heart and lungs. So there's this feeling that, well, they're guessing, what things are going on. So to prevent the guesswork, we're talking about the idea of remote diagnostics or remote patient exams. And so there's a company that we've worked with now for about 5 years called TytoCare that really leads the market in terms of the development of these devices. And so an example, for our brokers that know the San Diego market, we started back in 2016 with a kiosk in the county of San Diego in the administrative building where we had 4,000 of our members when people used to go to work. Remember, before we all worked from home, but when people used to go to work, there were 4,000 of Kaiser Permanente's members on one site. It was almost like a campus, for the county of San Diego. And so to make care convenient for them, we had a kiosk called a health spot. And so this kiosk was a walk-in kiosk. You could walk in and it had devices like this where a physician could examine you remotely from an office building and listen to your heart and lungs, look in your nose and throat, et cetera. However, the kiosk obviously was big. It cost $500,000 and a lot of money per month to basically lease. And so that's evolved over time to carts that cost $30,000 to $40,000. And these carts had a lot of interactive and problems with the devices that were hooked to them, to this device. So this device you're looking at here, you can buy it at Best Buy. And I can give it a disclaimer, I have nothing to do with this company, so I'm not trying to sell this, but you can buy this at Best Buy, for under $300. That's a huge step forward in the market. There's going to be more competition, and the market will bring these down to the cost of, under $100, I'm sure. This also has, the ability of taking your temperature, taking your pulse, looking in your ear, nose, and throat, listening to your heart and lungs, all of it from the convenience of your living room. So just think, if your kid has an ear infection, instead of driving to urgent care, in the middle of the night or on the weekends, you can just take this and look in the ear. And it's got, speaking of AI, and we'll talk a little more about AI later, it's got intelligent software built in that allows the parent to use this. This is not a doctor device. This is a consumer parent device. And so you can take what you see there in the hand, and it guides you to look in the eardrum. It's got AI built in, just like when you take a picture of your checkbook or check for your bank. It's got a giant green check mark that comes up when you're actually looking at the eardrum. It takes pictures of that, it records it, and then your physician can either look at it real time or asynchronously. You can look at a recording of it and then get back to you. So this is the cool, future in terms of what we can do. And so when we used to have waits at urgent care prior to COVID, we came up with an idea that was not only great for our patients, but great for our physicians. So we could have our physicians that could be at home during nights and weekends, and they could help with any wait times in urgent cares throughout our San Diego and Southern California region. And so what we can do is basically allow the physician to see selected patients that are offered, an exam that is a remote patient exam. And if they elect in, they can get seen by a doctor, prescriptions, everything done as if they saw the doctor person to person. So let's take a quick video. I have a quick video of what that looks like.
Welcome to urgent care. How can I help you today?
I've just been having some really bad ear pain. I need to get this looked at.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Unfortunately, the wait time is about 2 hours right now. But the good news is, it looks like you qualify for our new virtual care program, and we can get you in to see a doctor right away. And if you are unsatisfied with your care, we'll be holding your place in line. Would you be interested in trying this new service?
Absolutely. I just got back from work, so I really just want to get this taken care of.
Oh, awesome. Great. So take a seat, and when the LVN is ready, they will call you in.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vanessa?
Hello. I hear you're having ear pain. Can you tell me what's going on?
I had a little bit of ear pain last night, but I just woke up to horrible ear pain, and I thought maybe taking a Tylenol would help, but it just was just as bad, if not worse, in the morning.
Well, I can certainly help you. Let's take a look in your ear, and the nurse will help me with the exam. Would that be okay?
Yeah. Is that the inside of my ear? It looks so cool.
Yeah. Well, it looks like you have an ear infection in your eardrum, and I have to give you antibiotics for that. And to make sure I do a more thorough exam, let's go ahead and take a look inside your throat. Stick out your tongue and say ah.
Ah.
Okay, perfect. And I'll also take a listen to your heart and lungs. Let's take a listen to your heart. Heart sounds good. Let's take a listen to your lungs. And take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Lungs sound clear. And I also checked your vitals and you don't have a fever, so that's great. So what I'll do now is I'll send in your prescription to the pharmacy and you can pick it up right now.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That completes your exam.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and I hope you feel better.
What do you think, Jack? Would you do that?
I would definitely do that. And, I have a Kaiser experience that really kind of sums up your telemedicine and your virtual visits. About 3 years ago, I was traveling to Denver with my son's lacrosse team for the World Series of Lacrosse. And one of the families that was there with us, the father ended up having a horrible allergy attack while we were there. And was, right on the verge of going to the emergency room when he realized he could log in, reach out to his physician, and have a virtual visit. And so in a matter of probably 15 minutes, he had his visit, had his prescription for the week, and was able to drive down the street and pick up the prescription on his way to the game and saved his trip. So I can testify to the ease and accessibility. And it sounds like a lot has happened in the 3 years that this particular experience. So just an amazing technology. And I think all of us can sympathize with the person in the video who doesn't have the ability in their schedule to wait 2 hours, and to have that additional option to have a thorough examination really just improves, our ability to access care that we need when we need it. So that's a fantastic innovation and growth in our ability to get the care we need. Now, one of the things, Dr. Bernstein, that we've talked about during our call today, and we've kind of touched on in a number of different ways, is COVID-19. How would you say Kaiser has evolved as an organization in the last 6 to 8 months with COVID specifically in mind?
Yeah, so let me go ahead and I'll advance to some slides that show how we've really transformed our care, related to that. And before we do that, I just wanted to mention that our hope is that in the future, just like we saw in that Jetsons commercial, that nobody has to drive into urgent care. That you'll have your own little, remote diagnostic device in your living room, and you see your physician, just like you mentioned your friend did in Colorado, but you can see them anywhere in the United States, actually. You can examine somebody, and get them treatment for whatever, is bothering them. So let's go ahead and talk just briefly. Another example I wanted to point out how this can help patients is when they are referred to a tertiary specialist. Let's say they need to see a specialist for their heart. Instead of driving hundreds of miles like some people have to do, or flying, hundreds of miles to different locations to see a specialist, they can actually get examined, and the cardiologist, for instance, could listen to their heart, completely with the same amount of both experience and quality that they can do if you were sitting next to them. So we've really transformed care. So what might have taken, basically years, has happened in months with COVID-19. And so what that has done is it's driven the virtual world. So what we're talking about today in terms of ways of seeing our patients virtually literally, as we've just shown, has really been crucial in terms of our treatment of COVID-19. So if you remember early on, we had a problem not only at Kaiser Permanente, but around the United States with a lack of personal protective equipment, PPE. So how do we utilize that more efficiently? Well, one of the ways was with the device we just showed you. If we do a remote patient exam, the nurse can do the exam with a physician somewhere else or vice versa. So only one person has to suit up with PPE, and we could save basically 50% of our PPE by utilizing, these remote exams. We've also done them and are currently doing them in skilled nursing facilities, nursing homes, where the nurses there are able to bring in a doctor virtually, 24/7 by using devices like this. And that's really helped to minimize exposure and also to improve the overall quality of care for patients that might have had been driven into the emergency room in the middle of the night. Now we can examine them in the middle of the night and really prevent, a lot of exposure. And so let me show you this graph that really shows the change that's occurred since the COVID-19 epidemic broke out. So if you look at the left side of that dotted line, so before COVID-19, maybe 30% at the most of primary care appointments at Kaiser Permanente were done with telephone, video, other virtual ways of offering care to patients. And then during the height of COVID-19, it's gone up over 90%. Now that's, patient selected. People have become, more comfortable, with the different precautions that we take at our medical office buildings, from the tents and screenings and COVID tests that we can do now outside before we even get into the building. So more and more patients are getting seen in person. However, there still is, this trend toward virtual care. So if you look at this, it's really been a transformational change. And so I think we're at the blockbuster video Netflix type of tipping points. If you think about it, we all used to go to Blockbuster Video, if you remember, and stand in line and get that DVD and then drive home and watch it and then drive back the next day, take the DVD back. And obviously, it was inconvenient. And so we're at the same tipping point for healthcare right now when we look at what we can do in terms of virtual care, where we can be the Netflix, the streaming download of virtual care for your health. And with devices like the TytoCare device for remote patient exam and with video visits, we can really do a lot from the convenience of your home. So what's coming up next that's going to really help this we're working on same-day delivery of prescriptions. We have, a pilot in the Los Angeles metro area where the patients can elect for a small additional charge to get a prescription basically delivered to them same day. So if you imagine you went on an e-visit, you had a urinary infection, you need an antibiotic, without having to drive in to pick up your prescription, we can offer you the convenience of getting that delivered to you same day. And so that's what we're working on. And the same applies to what kind of tests can we do at home? And so the future will not only include remote patient exam, it'll include remote patient labs. So we'll be able to do point of care lab testings from the convenience of your living room. That's not there yet, but it is something that we're working on.
Wow. So let me first say that the increase in the number of people utilizing e-visits over that short a period of time is amazing. Do you ever get any type of feedback or concerns from people that worry about their information being divulged through internet means and just, technology in general? And if so, how do you address that and bring a sense of security to those members that may have that concern?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's this one that we made here. And if you think about it, this all goes back to one movie. So I don't want to give you the big hint of what movie everybody's paranoia goes back to when they think about people getting their data. It all goes back to this movie right here.
Skynet defense system
We're in.
now activated.
We're past the firewalls, local defense nets, Minutemen, and subs.
Skynet fully operational, processing at 60 teraflops per second.
Sir,
it should take less than a minute to find the virus and kill it.
All access inquiries to your supervisor.
Let's pray to God this works.
Skynet defense system now activated.
Power failure? No.
So for all of you that don't remember and haven't seen Terminator 20 times like I have, this was, Skynet taking over the world and basically changing mankind because AI basically is going to run things. And if you look at what's happened to this point, AI can beat us in chess. Back in 1997, we could use a computer to beat the smartest human, in chess, and they could beat us in the more complex Go just recently. There's a lot we're surrounded by, from our social media to every time you sign on to Amazon, it gives you those product recommendations to maps, directions, chatbots. And your Tesla is going live this month, believe it or not. It was announced that fully autonomous driving in the beta version is going to be given out to select people. Will be driving around with their hands truly not on the wheel like this, supposedly, even though you're supposed to have your hands on the wheel. But there's a lot to answer your question, in terms of what's going on with AI. So what does Kaiser Permanente do? So we have a tremendous amount of patient data. In fact, probably more patient data when you think of our millions of patients nationwide than any other health system because of how long we've had our patients on electronic medical records. So if you think of Mount Whitney in California, we can do 30 stacks of CD-ROMs as high as Mount Whitney, or we can circle the globe 65 times with floppy disks, if you remember what those were. So, we really take patient data security seriously. So we don't use any outside servers. We have our own internal servers. We don't farm them out overseas somewhere. Everything we do is carefully protected because that's really key, to patient data security and patients, belief that we're protecting them not only health-wise, data-wise, and you're absolutely right, Jack, as we look at, what's happening, with healthcare and the amount of virtual care that's happening. All of our virtual care is happening, within, our closed system of servers and care so that it's not being, farmed out. So anytime, we look at the future and we look at different servers, we really have to spend years and years certifying a server that it's basically protected enough to allow us to put our patient data, within them. And so that's, the answer to your question, I hope. Any other things that you're thinking in terms of patient data security?
No, I think you addressed it. It's always a concern, today, even on an individual level, having, some part of your life hacked from the outside, or, you're seeing things in the news about a company that's been hacked, but knowing that, the way that you've structured your information and the way you're securing it, it's very helpful, and it probably brings a lot of sense of security to people when they're accessing, their healthcare through digital means, and it brings probably a lot of security to them, knowing that you guys have really addressed this and thought this out. So, one of the other things that I think about when I think of Kaiser is the way that you guys have expanded, not just your or your digital interaction, but also you've gone a long way expanding your physical presence, throughout the state as well. I feel like I drive, down the 405 or down the 5 and, both north and south, and I see a lot of additional building of physical presence. So what is, Kaiser's perspective on expanding not only their ability to touch their members and serve them digitally, but also physically?
Yeah, so we're doing both. I mean, obviously, patients have a choice of the type of care. And post-COVID, we imagine people are going to want to do a lot more in-person care. We look at, we talked about the tipping point, between Blockbuster and Netflix. Where are we going in terms of healthcare? We think it's about, we predict it's about 50-50. So about 50% of, a patient's care would be done at home, and about 50% where they'd come in person. Obviously, there's things, preventative tests everywhere from mammograms, colonoscopies, et cetera, where you need to come in. And so to do that, we're making care more convenient as far as the location of the facilities. So we've redesigned our facilities over the year. We did a program called Reimagining Ambulatory Design that we called RAD, because it was really rad when you look at these buildings. And we're trying to make these buildings, into places of relaxation and healing. So when you go into these new buildings, and we've built a lot of them around the Southern California region now that we've completed, you get a whole new feel. You don't get a waiting room feel, you get an open air feel, to them. There's bringing in both outside and inside. There's places to sit and relax. There's new apps that we've developed that automatically check you in as you walk into a building, then notify you when the physician is ready to see you, so that you're not just waiting around. You can do things during the in-person process to make it a better experience. And so we're doing everything we can to make that feel like home, so that if you can't get care at home, when you do come in to see the doctor, you still have a feeling of family, that we're there to care for you in our different facilities and buildings. I mentioned earlier that I helped to build the new hospital in San Diego, our San Diego Medical Center. We designed that with the patient in mind. Nothing had been built to that point, similar to it. Not only did we have 80-inch monitors, so we were really afraid during Super Bowl weekend whether anybody would ever go home from because you have an 80-inch monitor in your room, and the whole family would be there. But it was also built on telehealth. So we started, one of the first programs where you're in the hospital, we can bring in a specialist into your room, immediately, without having to wait for them to come there during lunch and round on you, or after work and round on you. Because we know doctors are busy, they have a full schedule during the day. And so when you need a particular physician to see you, well, we can bring them into your room now, while you're hospitalized to see you. And that basically helps to expedite your care, get the right tests ordered, get you seen sooner, and get you feeling well and out of the hospital sooner. So those are some of the, different ways that we can, really improve the overall in-person experience, of care.
Well, Dr. Bernstein, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and sharing all the information that you have today. I know that I'm personally walking away from our time together, having a deeper perspective of, how Kaiser's evolved over the years, and really kind of where your focus and intentions are moving forward. Your level of commitment to California is amazing. I think that goes without saying. But really your commitment to improving the lives of Californians and their access to care is a testament to all your innovation and all the resources that you develop and bring forward. And so, your time here and the information you provide has really brought that to light. And I just can't thank you enough for A, your time, and B, just all of your vast information. And like I said, it's not often that we get to have a doctor and an author. I typically am here with another salesperson, and I think this conversation will probably be much more meaningful to the brokers who see this and how they position the conversation with employees that are choosing to sign up for Kaiser. So thank you sincerely for all of your time and information. It's been very helpful.
We appreciate it, and thanks for having us today, Jack. Great talking with you.
Thank you, Dr. Bernstein.
Thank you.